Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. First of all, happy Memorial Weekend. I hope everybody's having a safe and wonderful Sunday. Welcome to today's live. I have two phenomenal guests, which we're going to dive into this wonderful topic. I'm here to learn, right? But I'm also here to give my perspective on the auntie level because everybody know I don't have kids. If you don't know, I don't have no children. So I'm here to give my perspective on the auntie level, on people that I know that have children, and definitely I'm here to learn. So, Gail, let's kick it off. Let's start today's topic.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another Sunday Live Chat. It's great to be here. And as Karen said, we have a very interesting conversation on a topic that's dear to us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gail Withers. I am the CEO of Envision Training Solutions out of Barbados. And my superpower is to help leaders see training as the amazing tool that it is to empower and grow their teams. So today we have Stacey Montgomery and Christian. Christian, I cannot pronounce your last name properly. I'm not going to butcher it because I want you to remain my friend forever and ever. So we have Christian and Stacey. Welcome. We're going to start with Stacey. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Christian, you can go next, and then we're going to dive right into today's topic.
Hey, well, good morning, everybody. And I'm so happy to be back here with Karen and Gail. And I'm really happy to be able to chat with Christian. So I am Stacey Montgomery, and I am a mom on a mission to help kids understand their value. I am a proud mom of a 23-year-old. I, he really gets mad at me when I call him a youth. So, or a young man. So I want to say I'm a mom of a 23-year-old old man who is also neurodivergent. And he had a challenging journey through school. So my mission is to help kids understand their value so that they will take brave action toward their goals and contribute to the community.
Great. Christian,
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you for having me here, and it's good to see everyone here. And can't wait to get into this conversation. So I'm Christian Vinceneux. I'm a parent coach. I have worked my entire life in the neurodivergent space with families who have a neurodivergent child or a child with a disability. And I used to work as an occupational therapist for over 30 years. And about 5 years ago, I transitioned to parent coaching. And I'm here today to support parents like Stacey and to support the kids and the youth who are not being heard and who are not being understood, even with the best intentions. So I'm here to make any difference I can and share any insight I can and learn from everybody who's here. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm excited for both of you to be here today. I thank you, Stacey, and thank you, Christian, for just accepting Gail's and I invitations for today's live. I think it's one of these conversations that's very much important, as far as just advocating for your child and from a parent, like I said, from a parent's perspective, just having the knowledge and the resource and the tools so you'll be well informed, so you'll be able to make a well informed decision for your child as well.
Mhm.
So, I know people's here for the chat, so let's get right into today's conversation. Why is it crucial, would you say, as a parent to advocate for your child? Anybody? Christian, Stacey, anybody want to take it? Go ahead.
I'd love to have Stacey, if Stacey, if you're
Mhm.
comfortable starting, I would love to hear a little bit of your perspective.
Sure. So it's important for parents to advocate for their child because that is frankly the can be the best way for your child to get whatever support they need. We are we know our children better than anyone, and we see things that a teacher may not see, other people who are around our children for a limited amount of time might not see. And so we when our children are unable to speak for themselves, we have to speak for them. I mean, the bottom line is we want what is best for our children, so we have to speak up for them and advocate for them. My son was diagnosed with autism, before he was 2 years old, and ADHD when he was in preschool. And all I knew was what I saw. So I didn't know about a lot of the resources that are available, but all I knew is that I wanted my child to have all the resources that he could. So I had to ask questions. I had to speak for him. I had to challenge the professionals because I didn't know. All I knew is what I saw, and I wanted it to be better.
Yeah, I have a question to that, Stacey, because you said that you had to push and challenge the professionals. Did you find yourself coming into a hard wall when it came to giving the information given to you? Was it naturally freely given to you, or did you have to like do your own research to figure out what's the best way for you to advocate, right? To learn the policies, to learn your parents' rights as a parent for your child. Did people welcome you the information? Or that's something that you
Well,
had to dig and find for
mhm.
yourself and then be able to advocate?
I am fortunate, compared to some other parents, that the information was free flowing.
Okay.
So, you know, I, I, um, I suspected that Isaiah um, was autistic before he was 1 years old, and I brought it to the attention of some medical professionals. I suspected that he had ADHD before his therapist, his speech therapist and other occupation, other therapists suspected it. In fact, I brought it to their attention. I said, do you think he has this? And actually, they said no. And I said, I don't have the degrees you do, but I see
Mm,
something, and something is
not quite right.
exactly. And so I brought it to his pediatrician, and we went from there. So, um, but in general, I was able to get a lot of services immediately. At that time, Isaiah is now 23, so it's a long time ago. Facebook wasn't the way way it is now. Everybody's on Facebook now talking about various groups, for kids with autism, parents of kids, who are neurodivergent. There are all these resources readily available. That wasn't the case, but um, in Illinois, there is an early intervention program. So as soon as he was diagnosed, I was told about that. I contacted them. And I would say literally within a week after that contact, I had calls from a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, and I think there was somebody else. I mean, it was like a week, and the diagnosis was within maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I I called whoever I had to call to get that working. So I know now that there are parents in my area where it has taken so long to get a diagnosis. I mean, literally years for some.
Wow.
So the information, and then my speech therapist, Isaiah's speech therapist, she was great. And she gave additional information. Like she recommended hypnotherapy. The physical therapist, she recommended different things. And so the problem were more with the schools. And again, I won't say that I hit a wall, but I had to constantly, especially in middle school and high school, ask for additional meetings because he wasn't making progress in certain areas, and they weren't following his IEP.
Mm.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I will turn it over to Christian now.
Hmm.
As you know, I could go on and on and on. We have a limited time here, so
No, thank you, Stacey, and um, those stories are important because I'm trying to focus my ADHD brain so that I don't go on for, on the tangent talking for 3 hours and you guys will be, hey, we've
Yeah,
got to wrap it up,
yeah,
Christian.
Christian.
Like I just
Karen,
did.
Karen is going to be our timekeeper.
I have seen and heard Stacey's story hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So when I speak outside of the neurodivergent community, people often look at me or tell me to my face that, aren't you a little negative? It can't be that bad. It can't, aren't parents a little, sometimes, of course, parents want everything for their kid, but it's not always realistic, But if you talk to any parent who has a child with a disability or who's had to deal with the school system, with the healthcare system, with doctors, you hear a variation of Stacey's story. So it's not. So that's it's something that's really dear to my heart, because when I started out, I graduated as an occupational therapist in 1985. I know. I'm a lot older than I look, but and at first I was in the same place. I was doubting when I started hearing those stories. I thought it can't possibly be that bad. The school systems in the U.S. have a process to assess kids who have different needs, who have neurodivergence, who have a disability. It can't possibly be that bad. And then I saw that it was that bad, and I saw the parents knowing that their child, knowing that there was something wrong with their child in terms of something that needed to be addressed that was not being addressed, and not getting really a lot of cooperation from the school district. I saw parents being dismissed completely by the school teams or by pediatricians, saying, "Oh, he's just a boy. He'll go over it. He's fine. Don't worry about it." And I'm not in the business of knocking down professionals. I'm one of them, and we all do the best we can. But there is a disconnect, and I guess my point at this point, my point is, we need to advocate. We need to advocate for the kids. We need to learn how to advocate for the kids, and we need to help them advocate for themselves, because nobody else is. And there are times some people will. And you will find some speech therapists who are going to do everything they can, and some occupational therapists and some physical therapists and some whoever it is, and tutors are going to do everything they can to advocate for that child. But you also have many of them, others, who somehow will blame the parent for being that other parent, for being too worried, and for the child not trying hard enough, when really the child is trying harder than any other kid. So we have to advocate. We have to put it at the front of everything we're doing for kids with disabilities and kids with neurodivergence, because often the institutions that we entrust kids to will not advocate for them, will not do what is necessary.
Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead, Stacey.
Yeah, if I could jump in. So a teacher or some whatever, the staff member at school, I can remember that they are dealing with a classroom teacher is dealing with 20, 25 students. Another staff member, a support teacher or a counselor, they're dealing with sometimes hundreds of students, and they are not going to, in the true meaning of the word, give your child individual attention. They're just not. It's not. It's not that they don't want to necessarily. It's that it's just not practical. They cannot. Right. So I think the whole concept of IEP is cute, and they're absolutely needed. Don't get me wrong, but the individualized portion of it may not be always accurate. When a child has a diagnosis, whatever that might be, let's say autism, let's say ADHD, there are things which they always recommend to every single student. So you have this diagnosis, so we're going to say this. These are the supports we're going to give your child. And those particular supports may be fine, they may even be necessary. But as a parent, you know if it's not going to work or if your child needs something more. Because again, this teacher is dealing with many students, and over the years they've dealt with hundreds of students, and they've dealt with students that have the same diagnosis as your child. And so they, in their minds, they're like, okay, this worked with this child, and this worked with this child, and this is what I was trained, to do for this child with this diagnosis. And that's what they're going to initially focus on. But then when they have conversations with parents and discuss how those supports may or may not be working, that's when the perspective and the information that a parent has comes in. And it's not only helping the child, it's helping the teacher help your child. So it's just really important to give that perspective. And I have been very critical of teachers, from my son's teachers. And I have been maybe somewhat generally critical of teachers, but I also have a great deal of respect for teachers. Both my parents, were teachers, and I know a lot of teachers. So I have a great deal of respect for them. But I do understand that they are working under some great limitations when it comes to each and every child that comes through their doors.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. I have
that's
a
a good
question.
point.
I have a question because something that just popped into my head, right? I know a parent that, when I mean, as far as, cause the thing that comes to my head, I know a parent that the school had did an IEP on a child without their consent, without them even knowing they had one, right? So now, based on the parent discussion that I know, they had informed me that that person obviously didn't know that the child didn't have one. I don't know how they ended up finding out, but they ended up finding out they did do one. And then she also mentioned to me, as a parent, she didn't know that she has a right to be a part of IEP. I guess the school asking for permission to do one, I'm assuming. And I wonder how many parents might not know their rights, and might not understand the policies that comes with the rights of the Board of Education, right? um and it makes me wonder, based on our conversation a while ago, and it makes me wonder how many parents, she only found this out because she had to be an advocate. She was forced at that point to be an advocate for her child, and she had to learn a lot of stuff, policies and procedures, and the rights, her rights as a parent, and the child rights. So she had to learn a lot to this whole dealing. And it made me wonder, is that something that maybe some parents might not know they're right? They might not know this is the school. Can I just go ahead and do something like this without consulting you first? And does this happen often in the school system? I don't know, because I'm not a school and I'm not a parent, but it just made me wonder, does this happen? um, and how often does this happen, and how important it is for a parent to understand their rights, right, and also understand the policies that goes along with the whole Board of Education, because that alone is this own their own policies involved. And it was just something that just popped into my head based on the discussion that we would be having right now when it comes to advocacy. How maybe some parents might not know their rights, so maybe, and with the knowing your rights, you'll be able to advocate better for your kids. Maybe things that they offer, the certain programs that they offer, whether it's a child that's have neurodivergent child, or just a regular child that's a regular child in school. um yeah, it was just an interesting thing that it just I'm sorry, it just came to my head now, and I was like, I wonder how many parents don't know their rights, you know. And with the not knowing your rights, you might not know the best way to advocate, or might not know, wait, this is not right. You cannot just go ahead, or maybe they're just accepting of it because they don't know. Oh, this is okay, y'all did it fine,
Yeah.
just let me know what I need to do as a parent, but not knowing that's not supposed to go the way the school system decides to do things.
Well, Christian may know this the answer to that a little bit better, but I didn't think that a child can be given an IEP without the parents legally without the parents' consent or being part of the process. But I don't know. I'm not sure, and I want to call the kids who don't have disabilities or who aren't neurodivergent regular.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, maybe Christian can address the legalities around the IEP.
Sure, sure. No, I think, Karen, it's a great topic because a lot of people starting out, a lot of parents who start out on their journey of raising a kid with a disability or with neurodivergence don't know their rights when it comes to school. And I can only talk about the US because that's
Right.
where
Yeah, of
I've
course.
lived and that's where I've, had my career. But and having an IEP without the parents' awareness or consent is completely illegal. Period. Because the IEP has an IEP team, and the parent is an integral part of that team. Like an IEP cannot take place without the parent as being part of that team. An IEP is a contract between the school district and the family on the behalf of the students, that the students' guardians are the parents. So the parents absolutely have to be part of the entire process from A to Z. And one, not to skip around, but to skip around, since we're on this topic, the one thing that I always encourage parents to do is to talk to other parents, to get as much information as possible. Because if you're starting as a parent, if you have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and you're starting to think about preschool and schools, and your child is struggling, and you're not sure what's going to happen, the best way to ask. Other parents have been in that place 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and many parents are willing to share and willing to help. So through more than ever, there's lots of groups online, support groups online for regardless of the condition of your child, whether it's if your child is autistic, if your child has ADHD, if your child has dyslexia, if your child has Tourette's or Down syndrome. There are lots of support groups online, and those are always great places to connect with other parents and just ask general questions or specific questions about, hey, so where do I start with learning about the IEP process? So where do I start with this or that? They also, I don't have any name in mind, but most largest cities have some kind of advocacy program for parents where you can have some kind of free support from, and it could be from another parent who's been through through the trenches for a while, for longer, and or it can be someone who's doing this as a community service, as a professional, and so those organizations can support parents and say, well, here's where you start, or here's a guide on what your rights are for every state, and so that's always a good place to start.
Okay. No, that's good to know because like I said, I don't know any of this, and to the conversation that this person that I was having, it's good that parents understand that they do have rights as well. Yeah, the school might suggest something, but doesn't necessarily mean that as a parent you have to accept whatever's being suggested to you. If you think, especially like Stacey just mentioned, you know your child more than anybody, so you would know if your child needs this or doesn't need this, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. I'm just saying in general, right? So
Another,
we, sorry, go ahead, Stacey.
another resource is many schools or school districts have special needs PTAs. So that's another resource. It's wonderful that we have places like Facebook and social media that have these groups where you can connect with parents who are in similar situations to you. Because again, when Isaiah was first diagnosed, there was no Facebook. There wasn't these online communities that were so easily accessible. But there are special needs PTAs, and some of them are thriving and offer a lot of support. So that's another thing. I do feel that a lot of parents don't have information, not even just about the legalities, but so I have this diagnosis. So what now?
Mhm.
And Christian's suggestions to lean on other parents is a great idea. But I do think that that's a huge issue, and I realize now more than I did back then how fortunate we were, because the information was just thrown at us in the best possible way. Resources like this is you need X, Y, and Z, and here they are. And I didn't even have to do research on schools. There is a preschool in our district that it's because preschool isn't required in Illinois. Um, even though it's a public preschool, you still have to pay. And there was a waiting list for the school. It's a really good school, but because Isaiah had the diagnosis and had IEP, had all whatever, he was able just to start. And again, I had no idea about this. I was just told this. And like, you need to go register him for this, blah blah blah, and it was great. But a lot of parents are not in that position now. And so when you get a diagnosis, that's where you really have to start with the advocacy. I mean, getting the diagnosis is advocating for your child, but at that moment when you have it, you just have to start doing research. Whether it's researching online or asking your pediatrician or whoever gave you the diagnosis. Who do I call? Where do I get resources? There are also many nonprofits that have a lot of resources, free resources. So we were told about a nonprofit locally that offered respite services for us, and so for several years, Isaiah's summer camps, we're paid for, and they offer others. That organization offered other services as well. So advocating for your child, it means asking questions again and again and again and again. It means doing research, and it also means if anything that's going on makes you feel uncomfortable or you're confused, you have to ask. If something doesn't feel right, just you have to ask. You have to challenge it. There's nothing wrong with challenging it. It could turn out that whatever you're feeling, it was not founded. But you have to ask those questions so that you'll know and you'll be comfortable with whatever support your child is getting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's a good point, Stacey. And I think one of the things that is coming home the most to me is that before you can even advocate for your child per se, you have to learn to advocate for yourself. I think one of the hardest things must be to have a deep set feeling that something is not right. And when you speak to the people, the professionals that should know whether something is right or not, they kind of sweep your concern under the carpet and then you begin to doubt yourself. And that's maybe where the advocacy for yourself as a parent comes in before you even start to advocate for your child, if that makes sense. That you have to keep pushing. You have to, as you said, try to find your support, ask different people different questions, and try to figure out what's going on so then that you become a better, more effective advocate for your child because it's important. It's
And
important. But I think, for the parent too, it's important for the parent
Yeah.
from
and
a holistic point of view before we even get to the child. You know what I mean? Like mentally, you really need to be strong and you really need to figure out all this. And I'm sure it's pretty tough. And then like Christian, I guess, was alluding to, then you have people trying to make you doubt yourself. Oh, it's nothing. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You know how mothers are. Y'all always think, and that's not the case. That's
Hmm.
not the case usually. And I've heard a lot of horror stories like that where the parents knew something was wrong
right.
and they were led down the wrong path, for lack of a better way of describing that.
Well, I also think it's okay to question and challenge the trusted professionals that are working with your child. Even if you're perfectly happy with, whatever therapist or working with your child, your doctors, it's okay to question them. I mean, if they are offended or whatever, then maybe that isn't the right person to work with. But question, get more information, and because again, you need to be comfortable with what's going on, and what they see during their sessions may be very different with what you see at home. And so the two of you have your buckets of information, and which needs to be discussed, and that will help your therapist or whatever the professional is, the teacher, whoever, give your child the best support that they can give your child.
Yeah. And I know today I know right now we talking about the importance of a parent to advocate for their child, but let's discuss the offset of that, right? What if you don't advocate for your child? What does that look like? Right? What is the outcome of that? Stacey or Christian, anybody want to take this one?
Well, there can be some profound consequences, negative consequences, because it can be anything from the child not getting the services they need, not getting the evaluations they need to really understand what they need. So it can really delay their growth, development, learning in with years, for years, and it can compromise their access to services. It can it could be being bullied and not, it could be so that, there can be so many different consequences, and it could make the result between a child who's and it's dark, but who's going to attempt to commit suicide
Mm-hmm.
because they're so overwhelmed with school, because they're so overwhelmed with every single day trying really, really, really hard and being told that they're doing everything wrong and then they should try harder.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't really express what they're feeling, because I mean, how hard is it for us as adults to advocate for ourselves? How hard is it? It's really
Yeah.
hard, and we all on a different continuum of learning how to do this for ourselves, and we're still struggling with it at times.
Yeah.
So how hard is it for a kid who may have, you know, another condition that makes it harder, that maybe they don't have the language for it, they don't have the life experience or understanding all those complex concepts, and so so it can be huge negative consequences on the child. So it's critical. It's critical for to really get to know your child, because obviously you can't advocate for your child if you don't really understand your child. So it's a matter of understanding the system,
Mm-hmm.
understanding your child, understanding how your child responds in different environments. Because if going off a tangent a little bit, but it could be that your child has difficulty reading or has difficulty attending to reading, and and then when they're in school, the teacher says, "Oh, each time it's reading time, they fidget, they're restless, they get in trouble, they don't listen, they don't." Okay, so do you just take that for granted? Then you say, "Oh, well, that's really too bad." And then you go to your kid and say, "Hey, kid, you really have to do better in school. You have to listen because you're getting in trouble. You're not getting A's." Well, what I'm advocating for is get to know your child. So find ways, whether it's reading with them or seeing what makes it. Don't tell them what to do. Find out what's going to help them be successful, to make the task easier. Maybe it's sitting in a different chair. Maybe I've worked with kids who, when they were given the opportunity to stand in the classroom, they could read better, they could focus better, because it engaged their whole brain and sensory systems better, so they could focus better. But if you have a teacher who said, no, we're not, you're going to stand out, everybody else is sitting down, you have to do what everybody
Mm-hmm.
else is doing, it's not going to work. So get to know your child. And, if you don't have the energy, the time to work with your child, but your child is in therapy, ask the therapist to say, can you find ways, can you try different things? Because my kid is having lots of difficulties reading. So maybe the therapy is not focusing on reading, but can you find ways to see anything that could help? Maybe, you take them for a walk first, and that sensory input is going to help their brain to regulate better and to pay better attention when they're reading. So this process, really, really finding any possible way to get to know your child as the best you can, is going to help you advocate for them better. And I went on a tangent a little bit, but
That's okay.
No, it wasn't a tangent.
Yeah.
It quite fit right in. Stacey,
Yeah.
do you comment? Because I had a question for Christian leading on from that, but I'm not sure if you're going to cover it before I ask
Oh,
it.
well, I just want to pick up on a something you said about sitting versus standing. When a couple months ago, I did a couple workshops at a school in St. Louis Township County, and I walked into the first classroom, and it was very interesting. The classroom had there were maybe, I think, around 18 or 20 students. And almost every single student had a different desk setup.
Mm.
So there was one or two students who had like the tall desks, so they had chairs, but they could also stand whenever they needed to. There was another student whose seat was more like a beanbag chair and had like kind of like a tray type thing. And there were all these different setups. And I was just so amazed and excited about seeing that. And it just stuck with me. And I don't know how often you see that nowadays. I'm sure it's happening more and more, but that's the type of thing that comes with working with, uh, good therapists and listening to the teacher, perhaps listening to the child and figuring out, okay, my child isn't paying attention, won't sit still, isn't doing whatever. It could simply, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, possible reasons, but it could be that if you change the setup, in the classroom for that child, things could help tremendously. So again, we haven't talked a lot about listening to the child, self advocacy, but you have to bring all of those perspectives to figure out what supports will work best in the various environments, whether it's the environment at home, at the dinner table, in a restaurant, an airplane, in a classroom. You have to get all those perspectives.
Yeah.
Perfect, Stacey.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Great point.
Christian. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, I was gonna ask from Christian's example of a child who does better reading, standing versus than sitting. If there was a way that the child could have advocated for itself, and you'd have to guide me on that. I'm not sure if it depends on the age of the child, the parental support, the school support. So can we now get into that? Like, how do we get our kids to advocate for themselves in a way that is effective and that makes sense?
That's good. That's a good segue into this. So the way I see it is, we can't expect children to self-advocate if we don't know what's going to help them be their best.
Mm-hmm.
So because kids only have so much life experience, and they only have so much understanding. What they know is when they don't feel good, that they know, regardless of their they may not be able to use words to say it, but their behaviors is going to show us, okay, they're not feeling good. And so it's our responsibility to try to understand, figure out, well, why aren't they feeling good? Why are they melting down? Why are they not able to follow directions? And so what's absolutely crucial is to empower the kids with information. So for example, if a child to use the reading example, if if they keep getting distracted with reading, then you want to somehow spend enough time as a parent, as much as possible, to try different approaches at home, to try, not so much saying you need to learn how to focus better during reading, but say, I know it's hard to stay focused when you're reading, so let's just try different things and see if something helps. So let's try to read outside. Let's try to read inside. Let's try to read in a different room, in a different chair. Let's try to read standing up. Let's try to read with some background music. Let's try to read with completely quiet. Let's try. So these are just examples. And as you're noticing things over time with your child, or if you're asking a therapist to try those things in a session, and the therapist said, I got really excited today because maybe the child had an OT session, occupational therapy session, and they went through an obstacle course. So they did a lot of physical activity. And right after that, their focus was so much better. So it may not last for a long time, but somehow, it's a win. So then we need to bring the child in the loop. Somehow we need to tell them, we need to reflect on that with them. We need to find a way to help them understand that, with their abilities, and say, hey, I noticed that when we did some physical activity, it seemed to help you to focus better. So, well, we're going to try that again next time. See if it helps every time or most of the time. And so by feeding that information back to the child and helping them reflect on what's helping them, what's not helping them, then that's how you build their self-awareness. Because we can't advocate for ourselves if we're not aware of what's helping us and what we need.
Yeah.
And we can't expect a child to advocate for themselves if they don't know what they need and how to ask for it. Because a child who's not going to have the language abilities or the self-awareness, then is going to be more likely to say, if they have language, I hate this is stupid, as opposed to saying, I need a break, or my body needs to move. But something as simple as saying, my body needs to move, I can't focus, takes a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of self-awareness, and it's not going to happen on its own. It's going to happen because people, parents, or other people on the child's team are going to say, hey, I noticed this is helping you. Let's figure out some other things. So if when you feel like this and when you feel like that, I wonder what you could say. And let's practice at home first, and then talk to the teacher. Say, hey, teacher, I noticed something with my kid. This happened at home. I've tried this. Every time it helped. We've also tried it during the OT sessions or the speech sessions. It helped a lot. How can we incorporate some of that in the classroom? And how, what kind of system can we set up so that when you're noticing that my kid is getting all restless and wiggly, what could be a signal that, so it's a lot of scaffolding. It's a lot of building up layers of awareness and communication, and to get to the place where the child can feel comfortable self-advocating. And unfortunately, so that's kind of like the best case scenario. Unfortunately, I've seen many cases where the parents will do this work behind the scene and will tell the teachers, and the child will start working up the courage to say, teacher, I need a break. I can't, something's going on. And the teacher will say, oh no, right now, we're doing something very important. We can't be distracted. So maybe the next hour. And then the child has a meltdown. And then the child is blamed for having a meltdown. So we're setting up the child to self-advocate, but then there's no positive response from it.
Right.
So that's also, one of the many possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hang on there, Stacey. Christian, last question on this. So I've heard of a case where something very similar, where the child was saying, yes, I need a break, or, I need to do whatever I need to do. And, the response from the teacher was, well, you know what? You can't get everything you want in life. Life is hard when you go into the real world. It's going to be different. Yeah. How is there any way you can help your child to manage something like that? Because my heart hurt when I heard that story. But I did not
Yeah,
know what kind of response to give
I
that
know.
parent.
I may not give you the right response because I'm getting triggered, from that because I've heard the situation. I've been part of those situations many, many, many times, and it's infuriating. And I go back, again in the U.S. I go back to the legal piece to start with because we can't forget that that's the overall container of what we're talking about. Uh, if a child has an IEP, the I stands for individualized. So individualized means it's a special, it's an approach that's been determined, that's been created for that particular child, not for every single child in the world or in the classroom. So yes, it is going to be different. That child has been identified as having needs that are different from the other ones. And there are laws in the US, there are educational laws that uh, ensure that there's a process to give that child what they need in order to learn. So, if the teacher was going to make that remark, then I would just, kindly or however possible way, just remind them that yeah, it's not everybody needs that, but that my child has unique needs. That's why we have an IEP, and that's why there's a system. Um, so that's where I leave it for now. Stacey,
That's
I
a
bet you,
nice way. That's a nice
Stacey, I
way of
bet you have
saying
a
it.
lot to
Well, I
say
think,
with
I think
that.
we're gonna need to have a part two because I'm not sure, and I really cannot speak to what exists for us in the Caribbean. May not be the same. And you did make a good point. You have laws in the U.S. that manage this kind of thing. So I'm going to talk to Karen. Maybe we can come back and have a panel where we have some people from the Caribbean. I don't have first-hand experience with this, but it's very interesting. Things that play out where children are involved, and sometimes you feel as though. So Stacey, lay it on us. So what do you think?
Well, picking up on the question that you just posed to Christian about, you know, the real world. So this is why I feel that teaching kids to self-advocate, starting that process to teach kids to self-advocate at an early age is critical. In my work, there's a big focus on self-awareness. And as Christian pointed out, the more self-aware a child becomes, the more likely they're going to be able to have the confidence to effectively advocate for themselves, to express their needs to whoever. So uh, it's a process. I mean, a 5-year-old is not going to be able to self-advocate for themselves in the same way that a 16-year-old is. But again, when we start giving them the tools to be able to do that, and you model it for them, it's more likely to happen. So when you're 5 in the classroom, when you're 10 in the classroom or wherever, when you're 16, you're not an adult. So you're not in the real world in the sense that a 25-year-old is in the workplace. So that argument has problems in and of itself. Children are children, and we are raising them, we are teaching them, and we don't expect them to have the ability to function in the real world the way an adult might. So yeah, you give them the support they need so that they will be able to manage in the once they become adults more effectively. And as Christian says, they have different needs, so you address those. But one of the reasons that I am so passionate about self advocacy is because it's a valuable skill for people to have throughout life. And I know that I struggled to advocate for myself, for years as an adult. And it didn't, and not having the confidence to do that did not serve me well. So let's start reinforcing those skills in our kids from a young age, whether or not the child has a disability or diagnosis or whatever. It's a valuable skill to have so that you are able to whatever the circumstance, whatever the environment is, to express what you need, to not accept things that aren't serving you well, and just to have the bravery to do that. Or it's not going to always be possible to walk away from a situation. But what will be possible is to stand up for yourself.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Stacey. And just I agree with you and Christian when it comes to self advocacy in school. But I only thing that I would like to add is because I have sisters, right? So when you have siblings, I think it's important for a child to know how to advocate with among children, um, especially within siblings. Because sometimes siblings we tend to cross each other's boundaries, right? Because we play, you rough my hair, I rough your hair, and that's just how the relationship goes between children. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's also another layer that I would add is learning a child learning how to advocate amongst other children their age. If they don't like something, knowing how to say it, but also standing firm in that decision, like, hey, whoever, or my sister, whoever the child might be, I don't like this. Don't do that again. Or, before I go ahead and explode and drag you or do something to you, I'm gonna tell an adult or parental person that's there. So that's the only thing that I would add. I totally agree with both of you as far as the child advocating for themselves. And I only thought about that because I have siblings. And I remember when I was growing up, how we used to just the way we used to act with each other and how my sister would tell me, I want to be in my room, and I go open the door, and I didn't even care that you just said to me, I want to be left alone. And the parents, for me was like, oh, they're just kids, they're just playing, but not understanding that a child learning boundaries just as important because it starts there, and then they be able to
Exactly.
bring it to other kids in the classroom, and then of course to the teachers as well. But yeah, that's the only thing that I would add. But I definitely agree with you both of you and the points with sub advocacy. So we're about to close in a few, and I would like to ask: is anything that you guys want to ask for parents for them to practically start doing in better advocates for their children? Any last words for a parent out there?
Well, I would just reiterate that self advocacy starts with helping your kids understand themselves, understand their strengths and their weaknesses, set goals. It's about self care. So um, just teach your kids to express themselves, ask them probing questions, and model it. I think a great thing is, I don't know if the same rule applies to other states, but I know in Illinois, from my son's experience, once he got to middle school, I'm not sure if it was sixth grade or eighth grade, he was permitted to be part of IEP meetings. But that wasn't the case in elementary school. But I think that was a good thing for him to be able to sit there, and he was pretty much silent most of the time, even through high school. And I always encourage him. I was like, Isaiah, what do you think? Encourage him to actively participate. But even with him just sitting there and not necessarily participating, speaking up so much, he sees me advocating for him. So whatever the environment is, if your kids see you supporting them, speaking up for them, standing up for them, then that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that, Stacey. I think
Yeah.
that's crucial. I think the modeling is often underestimated. The power of modeling is often underestimated, and and I think that can be taken to any aspect of advocating for your child. Like the more, if there's, to go back to our earlier example of reading, if your child is getting in trouble because they're not focused when they're reading in school, and you're trying a bunch of different things at home, and then you don't stop at, oh, I figured out that this is helpful for my kids, I'm going to go tell the teacher to do that, so that it will help. That's advocating for your child. But how can you loop your child in and say, oh, so I'm noticing when you're sitting on this ball chair and it gives your body a little bit of movement, it helps you focus better. Now, how would you feel if we asked the teacher to do that? Uh, and your child may say, oh, well, there are, 3 ball chairs in the classroom, but there's never one available for me. Okay, well, maybe your teacher hasn't realized that, that's really important to you, that could make a difference. I wonder how you could request to your teacher. I wonder how you could talk. And role play that, and practice that at home in a safe setting, because that's what's going to lead the way to your child becoming more and more comfortable to self-advocate. And then, you send an email to the teacher and say, hey, I've been working on this with my kid. They may walk up to you, they may ask you, if they can have a ball chair to focus better when they're reading. And it's all of that behind the behind the scene work, but it's looping your child in the process and empowering them to do that is that's the final step. I mean, that's not final, but that's what we really want, because we want them to learn those skills and learn that it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's good what you said, especially role playing that out and practicing. And the more you practice, he's gonna eventually, or she, depending who the child is, they will have the courage to say that for themselves. So, how can we get in touch with you, Christian? How can we get in touch with you, and Stacey? How can we get in touch with you? How can the people connect with you if they want to have any questions? They want more of this conversation. Um, I'm gonna
Uh,
put you guys stuff in the chat, but go ahead.
okay. Well, if people are on LinkedIn, I put out a lot of content, daily content on LinkedIn, focused on neurodivergence, parenting, autism, sensory processing, ADHD, whatnot. So that's a good way to find me there. I also have a website, lifeguidecoaching.org, and also have a YouTube channel where I've been creating videos on these different topics. And my email, I think you probably put my email somewhere, Christian at lifeguidecoaching.org.
Yes.
And for me, I also am on LinkedIn, and I'm also very active on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Stacey M Design, and I have a Facebook group, which is Stacey M Design SEL Community. And my website is staceymdesign.com.
Keep
My
it all the
email
same.
is staceymdesign.com. So if you haven't figured it out, my company is called Stacey M Design.
Okay, guys, we're gonna go because my internet's starting to give me the little signal. So, Gail, in closing, any last comments? Please
Yes,
connect.
I wanted to thank
Sorry.
Christian and Stacey for another really great conversation. I think I love being able to unwrap the hard stuff. And this is stuff that people, sometimes it's hard for them to talk about. For me personally, one of the bigger takeaways, and I know we didn't talk about this, is leading by example. I think leading by example for our children, irregardless, because I think that may be how bullying starts, when you haven't led your child properly to understand everyone is uniquely different, and you have to treat everybody with respect rather than highlighting why they're different and discriminating against them because they're different. I think that mindset for our children starts with us. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from you when the Christian was talking. I think we need to lead by example as parents, foundationally. But I just wanted to thank you guys for another insightful conversation. I have lots to think about. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. That's not your fault. That's, yeah. So, Karen, you can close this out, and
Yes.
tell us what's going to be happening next Sunday.
Next Sunday is another comeback, 12:30 p.m. And please follow Stacy, follow Christian, follow Gail, or follow myself if you want to hear my voice all over the place. But listen, just connect with everybody here. Everybody here have valuable information for you to learn, for you to pick up on, for you to just interact with the content is very important. Christian content is amazing. Gail and Stacy content is amazing. But please, guys, don't be shameful to connect with them if you have a question. I feel like sometimes people don't want to. Um, feel like I'm outing myself if I contact somebody, but it's personal. You know, nobody's gonna know but you and the person. So don't
Yeah.
be ashamed to connect with them if you have a question regarding this topic, Stacey or Christian. Okay, everybody have a great Memorial Weekend.
Bye,
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank
Thank
everybody.
you.
you.
And
Bye.
thank you for opening your space for this topic. Really talking about leading by example. You're both of you are,
Thank you.
Gail and Karen, you're doing that. And so thank you. Thank you for doing that. And Stacey, it's always good chatting with you and,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
sharing the stage with you. So
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yes.
guys.
Bye. Don't hang up. Don't leave, Stacey and
Bye.
Christian.
the after
Bye,
party is
guys.
about to start.
Woo!